All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to explore something fascinating, the invisible battlefield of the mind. And for this, we're drawing our insights straight from the book The Generals of Pakistan by Zaheer Ahmad Meer. We're going to see how psychological operations, or PsyOps, have been this incredibly crucial but often overlooked part of strategic thinking throughout the nation's history. You know, this quote from the book really just hits the nail on the head. It's such a powerful reminder that victory isn't just about who has more tanks or soldiers. It's also about will, it's about perception, and it's about belief. And that's really the central theme we're unpacking today. So first up, the invisible battlefield. What are we actually talking about here? Well, this is a space where ideas become ammunition, where the stories we believe can be way more powerful than entire armies. The book lays out this really powerful idea. Pakistan's military leadership has understood for a long, long time that the mind itself is territory. It's something to be won and defended. So shaping public opinion, building up national morale, and even getting inside an adversary's head, these aren't just side quests. No, they're absolutely central to the whole national strategy. It's really important to get this straight. PsyOps are so much more than just simple propaganda. We're talking about carefully planned strategic actions. They're designed from the ground up to influence the emotions, the motives, and ultimately the behavior of a very specific audience. And that audience could be your own people at home, or it could be an adversary abroad. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does it look like in practice? Well, let's go back in time to a really formative period in Pakistan's history, the era of President Ayub Khan, and see how these ideas were first put into action on a massive national scale. Ayub Khan's time in power, which was more than a decade, was all about intense nation building. I mean, think about the challenge. You have to forge a single, unified national identity from this diverse and, at the time, geographically split population. So communication, it wasn't just important, it became the essential tool for this huge task. So the strategy back then was mostly focused inward. The goal wasn't really about demoralizing some external enemy, it was about energizing the Pakistani people themselves. And the radio was the perfect tool for the job. It let the government broadcast messages of unity and progress right into people's homes, all across the country. Just imagine hearing about the construction of new dams or the success of farming reforms, all of it framed as a collective national win, building this shared story of a modern developing country. All right, now let's fast forward a couple of decades. The whole geopolitical landscape has shifted dramatically. There's a new massive conflict brewing right on the border, and that meant the approach to psychological operations also had to change in a really fundamental way. And this chart right here just highlights what a massive shift in strategy this was. Under General Ziaul Haq, during the Soviet-Afghan War, the main tool of influence went from radio broadcasts to the much, much more potent forces of ideology and faith. So why the change? Well, the threat was different. It wasn't about a lack of internal unity anymore. It was the ideological challenge of communism from a superpower right next door. A simple message about development projects just wasn't going to cut it. But faith? That provided a powerful, unifying counter-narrative. It framed the whole conflict not just as a border dispute, but as a defense of belief, a defense of values. And that message of moral strength resonated so deeply at home and was absolutely crucial for mobilizing support. So, after looking at these two very different eras with their own unique challenges and different toolkits, what's the big lesson that the generals of Pakistan wants us to walk away with? It all boils down to this one crucial point. Psychological strength is strategic strength. A nation's resilience, its unity, its will to keep going, these aren't just nice, fuzzy qualities. They're hard-edged, critical, strategic assets. And whether you build that strength through radio broadcasts talking about national pride, or you fortify it with faith during a massive geopolitical crisis, the end goal is always the same: to strengthen the collective mind of the nation. And that, of course, brings us right to today. The battlefield of the mind, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's just moved online. The tools have evolved from state-run radio to countless social media platforms that work in an instant. And that leaves us with a really critical question. In an age where information and disinformation spreads at the speed of light, how has this invisible war changed? And what on into something fascinating, drawing from Zaheer Ahmad Meer's book, The Generals of Pakistan. We're going to look at how the very idea of a battlefield has changed. It's not just about tanks and soldiers anymore. It's about the digital world, it's about information, and specifically how Pakistan's military strategy has had to evolve right along with it. Let's get into it. So this quote right here, this is the key to everything we're talking about today. Think about it. This frames information not as just news or something you read online. No, it's a strategic asset, a tool. It's a weapon, an instrument of national defense. And that single idea is what drives the strategies of two very different generals in two very different eras. So let's rewind a bit. Our story really starts with what we can call the first wave, and that's under the leadership of General Pervez Musharraf. Now, this era wasn't defined by digital tactics, not yet. It was all about a really smart, almost sophisticated understanding of the power of media and the need to manage the national story. And here's what's so interesting about this period. It was a dual strategy, a real balancing act. On one hand, you had the government allowing this massive explosion of private TV channels. I mean, the media landscape just blew up. It seemed much more open. But, and this is a big but, at the very same time, they were building a system to control the narrative, to step in when they felt a story was a threat to national stability. So it's like, yeah, you can talk, but we're keeping a hand on the steering wheel. So this brings us to this key term, counter-narrative. What exactly is it? Well, it's way more than just saying that's not true. A counter-narrative is a proactive, strategic message. It's designed to get out ahead of a story, to challenge it, and to completely dismantle an opposing viewpoint before it can really take hold in people's minds. This became the main tool for managing that new, chaotic media landscape. Okay, so this slide is where you can really see the jump. It just perfectly captures the huge technological leap we're talking about. Over on the left, you've got the Musharraf method. It's all about TV channels, it's broadcast, it's kind of analog. Then you look to the right, under Field Marshal Munir, and the tools are straight out of science fiction. We're talking AI, cyber monitoring, deepfake labs. The methods are worlds apart, right? But look at the goal. The goal is the same, narrative control. The what hasn't changed, but the how, the how has been completely revolutionized. And that brings us right up to the present day, the second wave. This is the era of digital warfare under Field Marshal Ahmad Meer. And listen, this isn't just a small update to the old playbook. It's a completely different game. It's a paradigm shift from just managing the media to actively waging war in the information space. So what happened is that the whole idea of psychological operations, PsyOps, it got this massive upgrade. The art of persuasion, of influencing people, has been transformed into this data-driven, high-tech discipline. The source even calls it a digital science. This is all about using technology to understand and influence the digital world on a scale that was just unimaginable before. So what does this new digital science actually look like in practice? Well, here's the new arsenal. You've got AI that can track public opinion and sentiment in real time. You have labs specifically designed to detect and fight back against deepfakes. You have these huge, comprehensive cyber monitoring systems, and critically, there are now dedicated units whose whole job is to respond to hybrid warfare. These modern conflicts where disinformation and propaganda are just as important as conventional weapons. And this right here, this is the new mission statement. It perfectly sums up the change. The goal isn't just to react anymore. It's not about waiting for a threat to pop up and then hitting it with a counter-narrative. The mission now is to proactively defend the entire digital ecosystem. It's about building a shield over what they call Pakistan's complete narrative space, trying to get ahead of threats before they can even do any damage. Okay, so let's pull all this together and really look at the full picture of this evolution. What we're seeing is a really clear strategic line being drawn. It goes from a reactive defense of a single story to a proactive domination of the entire information environment. It's a whole new set of rules for a whole new kind of war. You can really break this whole journey down into 3 clear steps. First, back under Musharraf, the goal was to manage the message in the age of 24/7 TV news. Then that evolved into an effort to control specific narratives using targeted counter-messaging. And today, the objective is to dominate the entire digital space using this powerful suite of new technologies. Manage, control, dominate. That's the trajectory. So as we've seen, this evolution shows a pretty clear path where information, the media, and national security have all kind of merged into one thing. The narrative itself, the very stories we tell and consume, has become a new kind of battlefield. And that leaves us with one last pretty critical question to think about. In a war that's fought with stories and data, what is the real cost of victory? Idea from Zaheer Ahmad Meer's book, The Generals of Pakistan. When we think about national security, we usually picture tanks, jets, the whole 9 yards. But what this book argues is that today's security isn't just about military hardware. It's about something much more subtle. It's about building a psychological shield. So let's get right into what that actually means.
This quote, wow, it just hits you, right? It really gets to the core of what we're talking about. The whole idea of conflict has been turned on its head. The new front line, it's not some line on a map. It's inside our heads. It's the battle for hearts and minds. It's basically saying that it doesn't matter how big your army is if you've already lost control of the narrative. Okay, so if the battlefield itself has changed, then it just makes sense that your defenses have to change too, right? And that's exactly what the source material argues. In this new era, information itself is the main event. It's both the weapon and the shield. We're talking about this constant, overwhelming flood of data, propaganda, and different stories all competing for attention. And nations have to figure out how to swim in that flood just to survive.
So how do you even begin to tackle this new reality? Well, the book lays out a super structured strategy. It's a comprehensive, 3-layered doctrine for information. And let's be clear, this isn't just a bunch of random ideas thrown together. No, this is a full-on system, a blueprint designed to protect and even project a nation's interests in this crazy new age of information warfare. So here they are, the 3 big pieces that make up this whole doctrine. A great way to picture it is like layers of an onion or maybe concentric circles of defense. On the outside, you've got the defensive shield. Then, a layer deeper, you have offensive operations. And right there at the very center, the core that holds everything together, that's societal confidence. Let's break each one of these down.
All right, let's start with layer 1, the defensive shield. Think of this as the outermost wall of that psychological fortress we're talking about. It's your first line of defense against all the stuff being thrown at you from the outside.
So, what's its main job? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Protection. It's basically a system designed to spot, filter out, and completely neutralize any hostile propaganda or disinformation coming from outside the country. The goal is to stop that stuff before it can start to poison public opinion or wear down people's trust. It's kind of like a firewall, but for the entire nation's mindset. But just playing defense is almost never enough to win, right? And that brings us to this second layer, which is way more proactive. This is where things get interesting. The strategy shifts from just blocking incoming attacks to actively going out and shaping the information landscape. Yeah, the key word here is preemption. It's all about getting out ahead of the story. You know the saying, the best defense is a good offense? That's this layer. It's about crafting your own stories, promoting your own narratives on the world stage to shape how others see you, to build friendships, and to shut down threats before they can even get off the ground. It is, quite literally, playing offense in the global war of ideas. And that brings us to the final innermost layer. And honestly, this might be the most important one. This is the bedrock, the foundation that the other 2 layers are built on. Because think about it. It doesn't matter how strong your walls are if the house itself is falling apart from the inside. So this layer is all about building strength from the inside out. The main goal here is to create and reinforce a powerful sense of national identity, of unity, of shared purpose. Why? Because a population that is unified and confident in itself is just so much harder to manipulate. They're way less likely to fall for divisive propaganda from the outside. You're essentially building a society that is psychologically tough, resilient, and naturally resistant to being messed with. So when you put all 3 of these pieces together, the defensive shield, the offensive push, and that strong internal core, you start to see the whole picture. And it becomes pretty clear why the book makes the claim that this doctrine is one of the most advanced of its kind in the entire region. So let's pull back for a second and look at the big picture. It's so important to understand that these 3 layers aren't separate things. They're designed to work together as one single integrated system. It really is a psychological fortress. The outer shield keeps the bad stuff out, the offensive arm projects power and influence, and that strong unified core makes sure the whole thing stands strong. And that final thought really just sums up the whole philosophy, doesn't it? That in the 21st century, real security, true security, depends on a shield made not just from steel and concrete, but from psychology, from identity, and from truth. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. In this age of information, where the line between war and peace is getting blurrier every day, and where simple stories can be turned into weapons, What actually makes a nation truly secure? What's the real measure of its strength? It's definitely something worth thinking about.